The advance begins. Date, October 2nd, 1941. Time, 5:47. Location, Bryansk, Western USSR. Dawn broke over a landscape scarred by fire and frost. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid bite of spent artillery. From the horizon, the first rumble reached the ears of the Soviet defenders. Panzer III and Panzer IV columns, their tracks tearing through the muddy fields, engines growling like iron beasts. German steel met shattered villages. Roofs smoked, wheat fields were blackened, and the roads were littered with abandoned carts and the occasional stray horse. Sergeants and lieutenants scurried through ruined factories, barking orders, voices blending with the harsh whine of Luftwaffe Stukas circling above. The locals had fled. The factories that produced T-34s and KV-1s, the heart of Soviet armor might, stood vulnerable, or so the Germans thought. But deep behind the lines, in a shadowed Kremlin office, Stalin's fingers trembled over the telegraph. Every factory, every plant, every machine of war relocate. Beyond the Urals, Siberia, anywhere the German advance couldn't reach. Steel rails groaned under the weight of disassembled tanks, gun barrels, and aircraft engines. Workers labored like ghosts, faces streaked with soot and determination, aware that the very survival of their country rested on their speed and secrecy. By midday, German scouts reported smoking ruins, silent assembly lines, the smell of victory heavy in the air. Yet in the distance, through the rolling mist, new train convoys vanished into forested tracks, ferrying dismantled machinery eastward. What the Panzer commanders didn't realize was that they were not witnessing the end of Soviet production. They were watching its metamorphosis. In towns swallowed by the German advance, civilians whispered rumors of ghost factories. Tanks and artillery, they said, were appearing from nowhere, as if the land itself was spitting out resistance. The Luftwaffe targeted rail depots, bombed warehouses, and strafed convoys, but the trains moved faster than the planes. By sunset, the German generals felt a creeping unease. For every factory they destroyed, new ones would rise behind the Urals, invisible and untouchable. The Eastern Front was no longer a race of armies alone. It was a race of steel and sweat. A single armored column reached a clearing outside a bombed city. Smoke hung low, but then on the horizon, the faint outline of a massive, half-built tank assembly plant shimmered in the evening light, rails snaking toward it like veins. The Germans had expected silence. Instead, industry whispered back. I-type continued to generate the next section. If you want, I can immediately continue with Section 2, the evacuation of industry, keeping the tension and cinematic immersion. Do you want me to continue? The evacuation of industry. October 3rd, 1941, 3:12, deep inside Moscow's industrial quarter. The city never truly slept, but that night it moved like a shadow army. Factory lights flickered, then vanished as machines were stripped, bolted, and crated. The hum of assembly lines was replaced by the pounding of hammers and the shouts of workers, their breath rising in clouds of frost. Tanks were dismantled turret by turret. Artillery pieces were hoisted onto flat cars as if they were fragile antiques. Engineers and foremen ran like generals in miniature campaigns. Every bolt, every gear, every blueprint mattered. Men and women who had spent decades shaping steel now moved with a choreography dictated by urgency and fear. Stalin's orders were absolute. Nothing could fall into German hands. Entire industrial cities were emptied overnight, leaving ghost towns for panzer columns to swallow. Outside, the German reconnaissance reported abandoned factories and silent rail yards. Oberstleutnant Kruger, surveying the destruction through binoculars, noted the eerie efficiency of the retreat. "They leave nothing behind," he muttered, eyes narrowing. Yet what he could not see were the thousands of train cars disappearing into the forest, threading through rail lines nobody thought existed, toward the Urals and beyond. The trains were slow, groaning under the weight of tanks, engines, and ammunition, but they never stopped. Snow began to fall, turning tracks into frozen ribbons. Soviet guards patrolled the convoys, rifles at the ready, knowing that even a single derailment or ambush could be catastrophic. But somehow, against the elements, against German bombing raids, the machinery pressed onward. By noon, reports from deep within the Urals filtered back. New industrial sites were taking shape faster than anyone could imagine. Simple steel frames became workshops. Workshops became assembly lines. Tanks, once dismantled, were rebuilt in secrecy, their engines roaring to life in remote valleys far from Luftwaffe reconnaissance. The Germans, with their blitzkrieg strategy, thought speed would win the war. Yet here in the vast, snowy expanse of Siberia, a different kind of war was being waged, a war of endurance, of logistics, of invisible industry. And then, just as the first T-34 rolled off a hidden assembly line, a Luftwaffe bomber sliced through the dawn sky, engine screaming. Its bombs rained down, a reminder that the war followed them even here. Smoke and fire erupted around a makeshift plant. Yet the workers, stunned and bloodied, returned immediately to their machines, rebuilding faster and smarter. The Germans believed destruction equaled victory. But every bomb that fell, every factory ruined, only accelerated a phoenix-like resurrection deep in the east. Somewhere beyond their reach, the Soviet war machine was awakening stronger than before. The ghost factories rise. October 5th, 1941, 7:58, Hidden Valley near Sverdlovsk. The first light of dawn revealed a surreal scene. Steel skeletons rose from frozen earth like the bones of some ancient creature. Smoke coils spiraled from chimneys that hadn't existed the day before. Men in padded jackets and fur-lined caps moved like ants over scaffolding, welding, hammering, assembling. From the valley floor to the misty hills above, an entire industrial city was being born. Overnight, in these ghost factories, T-34s emerged from crates. KV-1s were rebuilt from dismantled hulls, and aircraft engines, polished and tested, roared to life in secret hangars. Engineers consulted blueprints under lantern light, tracing every line with obsessive care. There was no leisure, no pause. Every second counted. A single mistake could cost them the machinery that would one day halt German advances. Outside, the German army continued its advance, unaware that what they saw as empty wasteland was in fact a cradle of Soviet resilience. Panzer divisions tore through abandoned towns, expecting victory to follow destruction. Instead, the land whispered preparation of quiet defiance. For every column that rolled forward, a new T-34 rolled off a hidden assembly line hundreds of kilometers away. Workers and soldiers alike moved in a choreography of desperation and precision. Cranes lifted hulls on the tracks, rivets sparkled under torchlight, engines coughed, growled, and then roared. And yet there was tension. Luftwaffe scouts occasionally spotted the smoke columns, sending bombers in strafing runs. Explosions ripped through makeshift warehouses, shrapnel slicing timber and steel alike. But the workers returned immediately, unharmed or not, rebuilding faster than bombs could destroy. By nightfall, the valley looked alive. Assembly lines hummed like a heartbeat, echoing through snow and forest. The first Soviet tanks, battle-ready again, trundled quietly toward concealed rail lines, disappearing into the endless expanse of Siberia. Here, the war was not about bullets or bravery alone. It was about the relentless power of industry, mobility, and human determination. A young foreman watched as a freshly rebuilt KV-1 rolled off the line. Its tracks crunched on the frozen dirt, eyes wide with disbelief. It can't be this fast, he whispered. Somewhere above, the wail of approaching aircraft broke the silence. Smoke spiraled, alarms blared, and the valley erupted into chaos. And yet, even as bombs fell, the factories did not stop. Something indefinable, unstoppable, was stirring in the east, a force Germany had underestimated. Industrial resilience strikes back. October 10th, 1941, 6:43, beyond the Urals, hidden railway junctions. The first trains rattled east under a heavy gray sky. Flat cars groaned under the weight of tanks, artillery, and crates of aircraft engines. Guards, rifles slung, patrolled alongside the tracks, eyes scanning the frozen forests. The Panzer columns thought they had broken Soviet industry, but the Soviets were moving faster than thought possible, dismantling, transporting, and reassembling with precision that bordered on obsessive. By mid-morning, smoke rose from hidden assembly plants like chimneys of resistance. Each trainload of steel became a weapon of rebirth. The T-34 once a concept in blueprints, now roll from camouflage factories. KV-1s rumbled through rail yards, their engines growling like distant thunder. Aircraft engines, crated and transported by river and rail, were reassembled in makeshift hangars, ready to dominate the skies once more. The Luftwaffe arrived, wings slicing the clouds. Stuka's dove, bombs screamed. But the trains moved relentlessly, shielded by forest, deception, and the sheer audacity of Soviet planning. Explosions erupted. Sparks flew. Yet the assembly lines restarted as if nothing had happened. Each setback became fuel. Every destroyed component replaced, often faster than before. Inside a Valiant case factory, workers cheered as the first T-34s rolled off. Engineers, their hands blackened with grease, grinned despite exhaustion. "We are not behind," shouted a foreman. "We are ahead, always ahead." Outside, forests muffled the sound of German reconnaissance aircraft, hiding the truth from commanders who believed the destruction of Soviet industry meant victory was near. By afternoon, rail junctions carried entire battalions of reassembled tanks eastward, disappearing into Siberia's endless expanse. For German generals, reports of these ghost convoys sparked disbelief. "Impossible," muttered a division commander. "They cannot replace what we destroy this quickly." Yet the numbers told a different story. Every factory loss had been replaced 2, 3, sometimes 5-fold. The speed of production, once thought secondary to battlefield strategy, was now a weapon itself. And in the West, panzer units pressed forward, oblivious. They had no idea that the very steel they burned would return to haunt them. T-34s would reappear on battlefields months later, in larger numbers, stronger and faster. Every bomb plant, every destroyed assembly line, became part of a rhythm of rebirth, a heartbeat they could neither see nor stop. As dusk fell over the Urals, a train emerged from a concealed tunnel, loaded with freshly built KV-1s. Its whistle pierced the cold night. Somewhere beyond, German forces would soon learn the consequences of underestimating the hidden strength of Soviet industry. And then, a distant explosion rocked the valley, not from bombs, but from a derailment. Smoke and sparks filled the night. The engineers froze, realizing the stakes of a single misstep. Turning tide. October 20th, 1941, 4:17, somewhere near the Siberian taiga. A biting wind cut through the valley as the first light of dawn revealed a strange calm. Snow blanketed the tracks, muffling the rumble of trains, yet movement never ceased. From hidden factories, T-34s, KV-1s, and artillery pieces emerged, their steel hulls glinting faintly in the pale sun. Smoke spiraled lazily from chimneys. The hum of machinery was now constant, a pulse that stretched hundreds of kilometers eastward. German intelligence still reported ghost towns, abandoned towns, and silent rail lines. They assumed victory would come with each city burned, each factory leveled. But the truth was staggering. Soviet industry was no longer bound to geography. It had become a living, mobile entity, surviving destruction and multiplying in strength. Tanks rolled onto concealed rails. Artillery pieces were reassembled in camouflage hangars, and aircraft engines roared to life under the dense forest canopy. In Berlin, generals and strategists convened, studying reports of production that should have been impossible. Factories destroyed in Smolensk appeared intact east of the Urals. Every machine lost seemed to reemerge, often faster and stronger than before. The Blitzkrieg, once unstoppable, now collided with an industrial force no bomb, no shell, no panzer column could fully suppress. At the front, Soviet soldiers watched as new tanks, the very ones they thought gone, arrived like reinforcements from nowhere. The T-34s they had labored over months ago now rumbled alongside KV-1s, their crews shouting orders, ready to reclaim territory that had been thought lost. Morale surged, a wave as tangible as the armored columns moving silently through forests and fields. The Germans realized the terrible truth too late. Speed on the battlefield could destroy towns, but it could not destroy resolve, ingenuity, or hidden factories. Stalin's vision of an industrial fortress beyond reach had become reality. The war would not be decided by who struck first, but by who could endure, rebuild, and strike back stronger. As night fell, the first engagement of this industrial resurrection began. Tanks rolled from snowy valleys into the smoke of a German-occupied town. Shells tore through streets, engines growled, and the ghosts of factories past seemed to march alongside their armored offspring. And somewhere, deep in the Urals, workers labored, unaware of how close victory had come, machines, engines, and tanks flowing endlessly eastward, ready to rewrite the fate of the Eastern Front. The Germans had burned, strafed, and bombed, but the Soviets had built, and from the ashes of destroyed factories, a new tide of steel surged forward, unstoppable, inevitable.